Hello, Leonard. Thank you so much for coming on the Malaysians on the Move podcast. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so my name is Leonard. I was born in PJ, but my grandparents' house was in Kajang, and that's where I lived most of my life. I stayed a lot with my grandparents because my mom was a single parent since I was like 4. I spent 6 years primary school in a Chinese school, which is called Yuhua at the time. And then my mom wanted to be closer to work when I got into high school age. So she worked at the Star newspaper. So we moved to KL just so she can be closer to work. I started studying at a national school. I think they call it Kebangsaan.
Yeah.
So I spent about 5 years there, and at the time, my mom always had this idea that she wanted me to study in the US. I think she wanted me to get the exposure and experience the different culture. And I signed up for the INTI's AUP program, they call it at the time, American University Program. So I spent 2 years at INTI, and then supposed to be 2 years in the US, but I ended up spending about 2.5 years. Graduated, not like I got like crazy results or anything. Started looking for work and happened to get one opportunity, and I just took it.
So, what are some of your best memories growing up in the greater Kuala Lumpur area? And you mentioned that your mom had sowed the seed in you to study in the US. How did you take that? Was that something then, you wanted to do as well?
Honestly, I don't know how to answer that. I think I kind of grew up in a very we need to find a better life kind of environment. So I don't know if I ever discovered my passion. Like, I think a lot of Asian culture is about, hey, study hard, find a good job. Like, my process to picking my career was, these are the top 10 paying jobs. Pick one of them. And I picked computer science. I had an interest in computers, but when I got into software development, it was nothing like I had imagined, right? So it felt like I followed a path to find like a better life rather than I followed a path to find what I get joy from. I think back to your earlier part of your question, like best memories in Kuala Lumpur. It's very hard to say because I think I didn't really enjoy my high school. I think I had like this backlash from leaving my primary school. Like, I was really close to the friends I had in Kajang. Like, sure, I made new friends, but I felt like I lost a huge part of me, and I felt like I spent a few years just thinking about how this really sucks. Like, life changed a lot, and I think the KL environment was very different. Like, in Kajang, it was still a very village kind of feel, but when I got to KL, there were students who I considered like kind of smart. Like they felt like they were in a different class of wealth. But I think that changed a lot in university. Like, I liked my time in Subang, Inti Subang. One of the most memorable things was we took this class called public speaking.
Okay.
And the teacher randomly asked me and two other guys, like, hey, would you like to join the debate club? And we were like, sure, why not? And then when we joined the competition, we learned that Inti has this inter-Inti competition for debates. Inti Subang has never won before. We joined and we won the first one for Subang. And I thought, wow, that was pretty easy. So that was like one of my favorite memories from there.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing how difficult the transition was from, like elementary or primary school to secondary school, especially because it's like you're at that cusp of 12, 13 years old and losing friends and moving to like a new environment is definitely hard. I wonder if there was anything to do with, maybe being away from your grandparents. Did they follow as well, or it was just you and your mom that moved to KL?
It's just me and my mom. I was never really in touch with the father side of my grandparents that much, just my mom's side. And I think by then my grandfather has already passed away. So it was just my grandmother. I wasn't very close to my grandmother, so I don't think that's part of it. I think it's more to do with the culture as well. Like, it's very different when you live with what I call village mindset. It felt like people were more welcoming, but when I went to KL, it felt like there were very clear lines, like, hey, you're not part of this group. There was a very clear difference between the different classes. Like some people clearly came from very wealthy families and had a very different air or attitude about them, right? I didn't like the separation there. And I think there was also a lot of divide among like different races. Like this was like a multiracial school, right?
Yeah, I would say in general, that seems to be like in Malaysia. I think at least when I was growing up, I studied in a girls' school, and I felt that at least in my class, people were more like assimilating. Like I had friends of different backgrounds, like Malays, Chinese, Indians. Now, when I look back, I attribute it to the fact that many of my Indian and Chinese friends were coconuts and bananas, like respectively. So everyone spoke English, and I think that in other areas of my life, when like in tuition, or I used to play professional badminton, and even in my A levels class, there's like groups of people that would segregate by race, and it's because they speak their mother tongue. So like Mandarin speakers will be speaking Mandarin, Tamil speakers will be speaking Tamil. So I also had felt that I didn't fit in to either groups because I don't speak those languages. I feel like what actually divides us is actually the fact that you rather speak the language that is your mother tongue. So you automatically exclude another person. And it actually is not really about the race. But that's just my reflection. Obviously, there is racism, and there will be some people that because of your skin, they just like, oh, I don't want to be friends with that person.
I think you made a very good point. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but you're right. Like I think in high school, I think there were more groups because there were Chinese educated students who rather speak Mandarin or they stick to that. And I think my mother, being a reporter who worked for the Star, my primary language in the household was English. So it always felt like it was easier to connect with other English speakers. And like I came from a Chinese educated background, but I don't speak Mandarin at home. Like I only spoke Mandarin in school. So when I lost that connection to a Mandarin speaking environment, it felt more and more uncomfortable over time speaking Mandarin.
Understood.
Part of that transition from my primary school to my high school was I felt like I lost that, that one tie left to the Mandarin speaking friends. I think it kind of ended up with me in the group that spoke English more, right? So yeah, you're right in that aspect. Like we get kind of divided based on language. I don't know if it's good and bad. Like, yeah, sure, we are duolingo, trilingual, right? But at the same time, if we're not speaking the common language, it doesn't feel very unified.
Very well said. I think that's why, like in Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesia is like the standard. Everybody just speaks that as like their first language. But I think in Malaysia, it's like really depends on the household.
I think I have something to add to that. So I think there's a difference here. Malaysia is kind of unique because I think Bahasa Malaysia is not a very solidified or polished language.
Sure.
Think about it. Like in Malay, the language evolves every year. You have new slangs, you have new way of talking, and there's so many words that's just copied from English, right? Computer is spelled with a K instead of the C. Like if you want people to speak Malay, there's like, oh, are you actually speaking English or are you speaking Malay? Like, why are you sometimes using an English word, although it's a Malay word? And I think that kind of holds us back. I think the language not having a real identity kind of holds us back on the international level. I just don't feel like our language is strong enough at its core identity to even be used as a communication tool, which is why we always fell back to our own language. Tamil, Mandarin, English.
Yeah, that's a very insightful observation from you. Yeah. And so when you made it to Nebraska and you had mentioned that, you picked computer science because you saw it as a way to have a lucrative career, but it wasn't necessarily your passion. How was that for you in Nebraska, taking the classes in university and then, going through with a career for that?
I think I would describe it as stressful. Not in the education department. It's more trying to live up to expectations, I guess. I came from a single parent family, right? From what I know, my mom spent everything sending me here, right? From my point of view, it was like, I cannot afford to fail this. This is like my one shot, like there's no second chance here. The classes were difficult, obviously. I would just say I was very stressed out. Like, can I actually do this? I was questioning myself a lot. And I don't know if the culture affected me that much. I felt like I always knew about American culture due to how powerful their media is, right? Like
Yes.
American culture is so well known throughout the world. So I guess I wasn't surprised with a lot of things. It's just sometimes there's a difference in terminology that you have to get used to. But I think overall my transition was pretty smooth. My English was strong enough to communicate with pretty much anybody. And it all just came down to how we see studies, I guess.
Yeah.
Malaysia is a lot about memorizing. Like, it doesn't matter if you don't understand, you just memorize it and you're fine. I think in the US, the culture is very much about you need to understand what you're looking at. Like, you are not going to make it in computer science by memorizing. You
Well
need to
said.
put two and two together. Many people I knew dropped out because they were like, nope, computer science is not for me, or they cannot figure out how to program. It's just a very, very niche career. I don't want to say it's difficult because I don't think it is. I just think it requires a different flow of thinking.
And it's not for everybody because you have to really stick through when your code is not working. You can't just give up and walk away. It takes a lot for somebody to succeed in this field.
I think I got really lucky. Like, I picked computer science knowing nothing about it. I just so happened that, I could. And even getting through like my first job, like I felt like I had a lot of luck in my life.
Yeah. And so, how have you liked your job and how have you liked this career?
I don't know if I like the job because it's very different. I think software programming is one of those fields where every project you work on, depending on the company you work for, has a different set of requirements, has a different challenge. Some projects were more enjoyable, some projects are not. So I would say that I maybe enjoyed one or two projects in my entire career. The rest of them are just,
It's a job.
yeah, I'm not really. I mean, there's a challenge to it, right? It's like,
Sure.
hey, the job is to figure out how to do this. Some part of figuring that out is fun, but some other part is like, it's just tedious or it's,
Mundane.
yeah.
Yeah, I can relate on a lot of levels. And so while you were, busy growing your career, did you move within Nebraska?
I continued to stay in Lincoln. In fact, the first few years I started working, I stayed in the same apartment I did as I was a student. The rent was cheap. I was sharing it with one other person. It was $540 for two people. I paid
Wow.
$270 for rent, right? Like, you don't really want to move from here. And I think I did that for about 6 years before like I actually moved to someplace else. I eventually bought a house here, but
Oh, congratulations.
yeah.
And how did you go about building like a routine? I'm sure you had like friends from university that probably stuck around. Do you connect a lot with Malaysians in the area or not quite?
We did at first, but I think a lot of them moved back or moved to some other state. There was only one other Malaysian here I knew who took computer science with me. He also found a job here. I think over time, a lot of the friends I knew from university just left. Like, they went back to Malaysia, they went to Singapore, or went to some other country, went to some other state. I don't think I had many friends left over from university.
Got it. And so what are your hobbies or how do you fill your time these days after work?
I think that has changed from time to time because, like I said, like when I first came here, I never really developed like a passion for anything. Right? I felt
Right.
like a lot of my years I spent trying to discover that. Like, I've joined book clubs, I've joined video game clubs. I've tried archery. It felt like there was usually a fever to try something at certain periods, but I never really found this one thing that I keep going back through, except for maybe board games. So I have a bunch of American friends I played board games with on a regular basis. But there's still only like one day out of the entire week, right? I think for the rest of the time, it was more just trying to discover what I really like doing. And if I have nothing to do, I always fall back on either reading or playing video games, like the two easiest thing to do by yourself, right?
100%.
And Nebraska is not exactly a very exciting city. People always ask me, like, why Nebraska? And the only answer I have is cost of living. But yeah, I think it's rough because I think a lot of what I feel is just, I don't know what I like doing, and keep trying to discover it, and I think I'm still in that process.
Oh yeah. I mean, it like you said, I think over the years it also changed, like what you liked and in terms of hobbies.
Mhm.
So with regards to like a true lifelong passion, maybe for you it changes every few years what you're interested in, and
Yep.
if it's board games for now, then you should just go all in.
Yeah, I think we do try different ones, but it's weird for me because I think for board games, it's not the board game itself that is fun, right? I think it's the group that plays it. Like,
Yes,
it's really
yes.
important that to find a group that makes it enjoyable, not just the game itself. So in that sense, do I actually like playing board games, or do I like the
Or do you like the
people
group?
around?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I see. So I usually end the podcast by asking my guests the golden question, which is, will you ever consider moving back to Malaysia someday? And I think in your case, you have a lot to say to that. You've built like over a decades long career in the United States, but I know that there's a part of you that is actually considering moving back. Would you be willing to share that?
Yeah. I would say, firstly, I haven't really made that decision yet. Like, I'm actually eligible for a citizenship now. I just haven't taken it because, as you know, Malaysia doesn't allow dual citizenship. Um, I would say that most Malaysians at one point have actually considered this, right? And I think for me is a kind of a sense of guilt too, because I'm the only child in my family, right?
Of course.
And I think spending over 10 years in my career here, I've forgotten a few things. I forgot that time moves on as well as we are building this career, and my mom's not getting any younger. While this feels like the opportunity that I should take, and this is the future I need to build, would I regret giving up that connection? Would I regret not going back there? So I feel like I'm constantly looking for a solution to fulfill both parts of it, right?
Well
And
said.
I haven't been able to find that answer. I think there are just too many restrictions. I've done a lot of research, like how do I stay here while I stay there, and you just can't. It's literally on the other side of the world. Omaha is a city that is 1 hour drive away from me. If you drove there and you dug a hole straight through Earth, you will arrive in Kuala Lumpur.
Oh, no
That's
way.
how far away I am. I'm literally on the other side of the world. It's very hard to juggle these feelings, and I'm so afraid that when I make one decision one way or another, I will deeply regret the other one. It's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, but it's also something that I feel like I've taken too much time thinking about it, and I should probably make a decision. But it's hard, right? If I think about it from a future perspective, if let's say one day I have children, right, which I think I would like to, would I want them to grow up in Malaysia, or would I want them to grow up in the US? Right? I think there's a difference in, okay, do I want them to grow up in this environment versus that? What's my career look like in Malaysia? Which is not great because I'm kind of specialized in mobile app development, and the salary in Malaysia for that line of work is very poor. I feel like
Oh,
I would lose significant income if I return to Malaysia. Other the consideration I have is, have I saved enough to make my move back comfortable? Am I going to regret trading, all the familial connections for income? How do I keep this door open without completely closing it if I return? I just can't find a winning play here. It feels like I know all my options, but none of them are good enough for me to make a decision on.
I can tell that you've put a lot of thought into this. And one question that I had though was, if you were to consider just the option of temporarily going back to Malaysia, but I know that would mean you had to quit your job here. And you said you have a house here, so you could kind of keep it or rent it out or something.
Right.
And then if you move back to Malaysia for a year or two and you got to spend so much quality time with your parent, and after that you're like, I'm not doing well here. I don't like the career here. Um, I want to move back to America. Do you think that your mom would be willing to move with you and come along?
To America?
Yeah.
I don't think so. And I think it would be very rude for me to ask that too, because a lot of her friends are there. A lot
Yeah.
of her family is still there, and asking her to give all of that up to come to a country where she knows nobody, it feels like too much of an ask. And to your question of whether I've thought about going back for a few years, I think logistically that is extremely difficult as a green card holder. We have this thing called a residency status, and if we left US for more than 180 days, we start getting flagged in the system. Like, hey, are you actually intending to live here? If we live more than a year, the green card status is lost. It becomes like kind of deactivated. I don't know what they call that status. So it's extremely difficult to return to the US if you have lived outside of it after a certain amount of time. It feels like I'm just caught in this net of decisions that I can't find a good one.
Yeah, they're like working against you. I think there is something here for if you're a green card holder and you're going to leave the US for some very long period of time, you can actually file something and it allows you to be out of the country for 2 years. So that I can send you a link or something, but there's something that you can file with USCIS or the Department of Immigration,
Right.
where you can be like, I'm a green card holder, but I'm going to be out of the country for 2 years. So like you file some document, and then you can actually be out while you maintain your green card status.
Right.
If you do come back, then you reset your eligibility to be a citizen. But I feel like if you went back to Malaysia for 2 years and you felt like, I don't want to be here anymore, and you want to return to US, then I feel like you would have felt satisfied that you actually gave this a try. And then when you come back to US, you've already been like, okay, I'm going to stay here. Now I just have to build the years to be eligible for the citizenship again. But at least you can come back here to the
Right.
US. So that's something you can consider or try.
I did think about that, except I don't see. The thing is, if I were to move back, right, to be with family, is 2 years enough? I think that's the separation between like kind of the American way of thinking versus like the Asian way of thinking. I think Americans are very individualistic in nature
Yes.
when it comes to making these decisions. So if
I
I
agree.
if I lean into that mindset completely, I can probably make that decision a lot more easily. But the thing is, it feels like this is something that I will regret if I did, And if I did go back to Malaysia for just 2 years, what does that really mean? It means that I would pause all my connections here for 2 years to go back to Malaysia. And what if I build connections there for that only last just 2 years? Is it enough? Is it going to be a waste of time? Is the other question too. Because like part of my goal is to want to start a family. But if I go spend that 2 years in Malaysia, am I pausing that goal or am I working towards that goal?
I see.
It's a cost that goes beyond just that 2 years. It's a cost that is going to hinder on the long-term goals and dreams, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that you were able to share a lot of this, because it is tough, I think, for Malaysians and even people who've like chosen to settle down in another country. Not like we weren't forced, like we actually had our privilege, and we had the opportunity to build a career here. But it's definitely at the back of my mind, and I know a lot of my Malaysian friends' minds as well, that it's not that easy when your family is literally on the other side of the world, and it takes over 24 hours just to like travel there.
Yeah.
It's not like a weekend trip.
I did find like sort of a legal loophole to kind of make that work, but it's gonna sound a bit crazy. So if I took up US citizenship, right, I can't work in Malaysia. But if I married a Malaysian, that will allow me to this is the one scenario where I can keep both here and there, where I can work legally in Malaysia and in the US. But this loophole is kind of hard to execute.
Well, nowadays people they do online dating and stuff, and sometimes they even find love from across the globe. So never say never.
Yeah, I don't think I can ask the other person to give up all their connections though. Like I think this is the hard part about it. If I ended up marrying a Malaysian person, one of us has to give up So I don't believe in long distance marriages. Like I think eventually you have to decide on one or the other. And I don't think I will ever be able to ask my partner to give all of that up for a chance to be here in a world that they're so unfamiliar with. It feels like a too huge of a sacrifice for either party.
Well, Leonard, I know you have a lot on your plate and you're really contemplating, what to do next and all that. So, I wish you the best. And I hope you have some friends and family that are able to also like give you advice or support your decisions and things like that. And thank you so much for like coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
Did you have any closing remarks?
I would say to all Malaysians who are thinking about living abroad, think really hard on the decision. Things are not always greener on the other side. There are definitely pros and cons. America is definitely a very polished place socially, but it has its own flaws too. It's just which flaws are you more willing to live with? Like, do you enjoy the double parking culture in Malaysia? Well, America does not have that. That you need to take all the little things into consideration before you make your decision.
That's really well said.
Thank you for your time.
So, thanks so much, Leonard.